Welcome back to another incredible story that proves why you should never judge someone by their appearance. Before we dive in, comment where you're watching from today, and get ready for a tale that will leave you speechless. On a luxury first-class flight from Miami to Los Angeles, an encounter was about to unfold that would teach a powerful lesson about respect, family, and true success. The gleaming cabin of the Airbus A380 hummed with exclusivity, each seat representing an investment of thousands of dollars by passengers who considered themselves among society's elite. Alexander Morgan, a 42-year-old hedge fund manager known for his aggressive investment strategies and even more aggressive personality, sat in seat 2A, sipping an aged scotch that cost more than most people's monthly grocery bills. His custom Tom Ford suit and platinum watch weren't just accessories, they were armor, protecting him from what he considered the mediocrity of the common world. The first-class cabin was Morgan's natural habitat. Here, among the soft leather seats and carefully curated amenities, he felt at home. The gentle clink of crystal glasses and the hushed conversations about market trends and property portfolios created the perfect soundtrack for his perceived superiority. Sofia Rodriguez, the lead flight attendant with 15 years of experience serving the world's most demanding passengers, had just finished ensuring everything was perfect for takeoff when she noticed a latecomer approaching the first-class cabin. The man wore a simple black tank top that showed off his muscular arms, cargo shorts, and well-worn combat boots. His head was cleanly shaved, and despite his casual appearance, he carried himself with quiet confidence. Morgan's reaction was immediate and visceral. His upper lip curled in disgust as he watched the casually dressed man make his way down the aisle. Other passengers tried to hide their surprise, but Morgan had never been one to filter his thoughts or consider others' feelings. Olivia Bennett, a renowned writer seated in 3C, looked up from her laptop with interest. She had made a career out of observing human nature, and something about this situation made her close her computer and pay attention. The contrast between Morgan's obvious disdain and the newcomer's calm demeanor promised an interesting dynamic. As the casually dressed man approached his assigned seat, 2B, right next to Morgan, the hedge fund manager's expression darkened. He raised his hand to catch Sofia's attention, not even trying to lower his voice as he spoke. "Excuse me, but there must be some mistake. This section is first class. Perhaps our friend here has misread his boarding pass." The muscular man paused, his expression unreadable behind dark sunglasses. Sofia stepped forward quickly, but before she could speak, Morgan continued his tirade. "I paid $30,000 for this flight specifically to avoid certain elements." He gestured vaguely at the man's attire. "Surely there's something you can do about this situation?" Marcus Williams, the flight purser, overheard the commotion and approached with practiced diplomacy. However, the man in question raised his hand slightly, a subtle gesture that somehow commanded immediate respect. "It's all good," he said, his deep voice carrying a hint of amusement rather than anger. Jordan Pierce, a young aspiring filmmaker seated across the aisle, couldn't believe his luck. He recognized the man immediately but stayed quiet, watching the scene unfold with barely contained excitement. This was better than any script he could write. Morgan, emboldened by what he perceived as submission, pressed on. "Look, I'm sure you're a perfectly nice person, but there are standards to maintain. This isn't some budget carrier where anyone can wander in wearing whatever they please. This is first class. There's a certain expectation." The man in the tank top slowly removed his sunglasses, revealing eyes that held both patience and intensity. "Tell me about these expectations," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle despite its gravelly depth. "What makes first class so special to you?" Morgan launched into what seemed like a well-rehearsed speech about exclusivity and status, about how success should be visible in every aspect of one's appearance. As he spoke, other passengers began to shift uncomfortably in their seats, some recognizing the man he was lecturing, others simply embarrassed by Morgan's behavior. Captain Robert Chin emerged from the cockpit for his routine pre-flight check and stopped short at the scene before him. His eyes widened in recognition, but before he could speak, Sofia caught his eye and subtly shook her head. The captain understood immediately, this was a moment that needed to play out. Morgan, still oblivious to the identity of the man he was berating, reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. "Here's my card. I manage a fund worth billions. Perhaps I can give you some advice on how to elevate your situation. Then maybe next time you'll be better prepared for first class." The man took the card with a smile that carried echoes of 1,000 movie scenes. "That's very kind of you," he said, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had fought his way up from nothing. "I appreciate your concern about my success. Family is everything to me, and everything I do for family." The word family seemed to resonate through the cabin, causing several passengers to sit up straighter. Jordan Pierce couldn't suppress a grin. He knew what was coming. Olivia Bennet had already pulled out her notebook, recognizing that she was witnessing something worth documenting. Morgan, still riding high on his perceived superiority, missed the shift in the cabin's atmosphere. Family? Well, that's nice, but in this world, you need more than family. You need power, influence, the right connections. At that moment, Sophia returned with a bottle of Corona beer, placing it respectfully in front of the man in the tank top. "Mr. Diesel," she said with a warm smile, "Captain Shin wanted you to know he's a huge fan of the Fast Saga. He especially loved your performance in Fast X." The color drained from Morgan's face as realization dawned. He had just spent the last 10 minutes lecturing Vin Diesel, one of Hollywood's most successful actors and producers, about the meaning of success. The man whose films had grossed billions at the box office, who had built an entertainment empire on the very concept of family that Morgan had dismissed. Other passengers couldn't hide their reactions any longer. Some laughed softly, others shook their heads at Morgan's embarrassment. Jordan Pierce looked like he might burst with excitement, while Olivia Bennet's pen flew across her notebook, capturing every detail of this perfect moment of hubris meeting humility. Diesel, however, showed no sign of satisfaction at Morgan's discomfort. Instead, he leaned forward, his expression genuine and engaged. "Tell me more about your work," he said. "What drives you? What's your motivation beyond the money?" The question, delivered with sincere interest rather than mockery, seemed to strip away Morgan's defensive armor. For perhaps the first time in years, someone had asked him about his purpose rather than his portfolio. Have you ever misjudged someone based on their appearance? Share your story in the comments below. And stay tuned for the next chapter, where we'll see how this unexpected encounter transforms both men's understanding of success, family, and what it truly means to be first class. Don't forget to like and subscribe to never miss another incredible story of redemption and revelation. As the aircraft reached cruising altitude, the atmosphere in first class remained charged with an energy that no amount of luxury could manufacture. Alexander Morgan, the hedge fund manager who had moments ago been so certain of his place in the world, now sat in uncomfortable silence, his expensive scotch untouched. Vin Diesel, still casually relaxed in his tank top and cargo shorts, took a slow sip of his Corona. His presence had completely transformed the cabin's dynamic. The other passengers, who had initially been absorbed in their own worlds of spreadsheets and conference calls, were now fully invested in the unfolding drama. Sofia Rodriguez moved through the cabin with practiced grace, serving the first-class meal service. She couldn't help but notice how Diesel thanked her by name each time she approached, asking about her family and showing genuine interest in her responses. It was a stark contrast to Morgan's earlier demanding behavior. Jordan Pierce, the young filmmaker, was frantically taking notes on his phone. As someone who dreamed of making it in Hollywood, he was witnessing a masterclass in humility and strength. The way Diesel carried himself, comfortable in his own skin, unbothered by others' judgments, was more impressive than any action sequence. "You know," Diesel said, breaking the tension, "I remember my first studio meeting. I walked in wearing a white tank top and jeans. The executives looked at me the same way you looked at me today." His voice carried no accusation, only understanding. They had their own ideas about what success should look like. Morgan shifted in his seat, his Tom Ford suit suddenly feeling more like a costume than armor. "How?" He cleared his throat, struggling to find the right words. "How did you handle their judgment?" Olivia Bennet leaned forward slightly, her writer's instincts telling her this was more than just a conversation, it was a moment of transformation. The contrast between Morgan's earlier arrogance and his current vulnerability was striking. "I stayed true to who I was," Diesel replied, his deep voice carrying the weight of experience. "My background, my family, my beliefs, they weren't things to be ashamed of. They were my strength." He paused, taking another sip of his Corona. "The same strength that helped me bounce back from failure after failure until Fast and Furious changed everything." Marcus Williams, the flight purser, approached with fresh drinks. He couldn't help but share how his teenage son was inspired by Diesel's journey from New York theater to Hollywood success. "He learned that success doesn't always wear a suit," Williams said, earning a warm smile from Diesel. Morgan looked down at his platinum watch, a symbol of status that suddenly seemed less significant. "I grew up poor," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Everything I do, every deal I make, is driven by a promise I made to myself never to feel that powerless again." Diesel's expression softened with understanding. "We're not so different then," he said. "That drive, that hunger, I know it well. But somewhere along the way, I learned that true power isn't about making others feel small. It's about lifting them up." Captain Robert Chin emerged from the cockpit for a routine check and couldn't resist joining the conversation. He shared how his own father had worked 3 jobs to put him through flight school. "Every time I put on this uniform," he said, touching his captain's stripes, "I wear it for him." The conversation began to draw in other passengers. A tech executive in 4A revealed how she started coding on a borrowed computer. A retired teacher spoke about students who overcame incredible odds. Each story peeled away another layer of the artificial barriers that usually divided first-class passengers. Jordan Pierce, gathering his courage, finally spoke up. "Mr. Diesel, your movies aren't just about cars and action. They're about family, loyalty, and believing in yourself. That's why people connect with them." The young filmmaker's voice shook slightly, but his words rang true. Diesel nodded appreciatively. "Movies are powerful because they can show us who we really are. Sometimes," he glanced at Morgan with a knowing smile, "they show us who we could be." Sofia Rodriguez returned with more beverages, sharing how her own daughter was pursuing her dreams of becoming a stunt coordinator. She doesn't care that most stunt coordinators are men. She says if Mr. Diesel can change Hollywood's rules, so can she. Morgan listened to these stories with growing awareness. The same people he had dismissed as mere service providers were revealing depths he had never bothered to discover. His world of hedge funds and hostile takeovers suddenly seemed small compared to these tales of real human courage and connection. "You know what's interesting?" Diesel mused, his voice carrying that distinctive gravelly tone that had become famous worldwide. "In all my years of flying first class, I've noticed something. The truly successful ones, the ones who are secure in their achievements, they never need to prove anything. They're too busy lifting others up." Olivia Bennett nodded, adding her own observation. "It's like in great stories, the real hero isn't the one with the most power or money. It's the one who uses whatever they have to make a difference in others' lives." The conversation took an unexpected turn when Morgan, his earlier arrogance completely dissolved, began sharing the challenges of his recent divorce. "I've been so focused on building wealth, I forgot to build relationships. My ex-wife told me I knew the price of everything but the value of nothing." Diesel listened with genuine empathy. "Family isn't always about blood," he said, echoing a theme from his movies. "Sometimes it's about the connections we choose to make, the people we choose to lift up instead of put down." Jordan Pierce was still recording everything on his phone, but now with a different purpose. This wasn't just about witnessing a celebrity encounter. It was about capturing a moment of genuine human connection and transformation. As the flight continued over the American heartland, Morgan found himself opening up about his childhood in Detroit, his father's job loss, and the fear that had driven him to build walls of wealth and status around himself. With each word, the expensive suit seemed to feel more comfortable, no longer a shield but simply clothing. Sofia Rodriguez observed this transformation with quiet satisfaction. In her years of service, she had dealt with countless passengers like the old Morgan. But rarely had she witnessed such a profound change in someone's perspective. Captain Chin made another appearance, this time sharing photos of his family and discussing the importance of staying grounded despite success. In the air, status means nothing, he said. What matters is character and competence. The first-class cabin had become something rare in modern air travel, a space for genuine human connection. The invisible barriers that usually separated passengers had dissolved, replaced by a shared understanding that true success wasn't about setting yourself apart from others, but about bringing people together. Have you ever had a moment when someone's wisdom completely changed your perspective? Share your stories in the comments below. And stay tuned for our next chapter, where we'll see how this encounter leads to an unexpected collaboration that will change lives far beyond this first-class cabin. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more powerful stories of transformation and redemption. As the flight continued over America's heartland, Captain Chen's voice came over the intercom announcing some upcoming turbulence. The timing seemed almost poetic. Just as the passengers had found their harmony, nature decided to shake things up. Vin Diesel remained perfectly calm, his muscular frame relaxed in his seat as the first bumps hit the aircraft. Alexander Morgan, however, gripped his armrest tightly, his knuckles white against the leather. The man who had confidently managed billions in high-risk investments was suddenly facing a different kind of volatility. "You know," Diesel said, his deep voice carrying easily over the sound of the turbulence, "this reminds me of filming Fast X. We were shooting a crucial scene, and suddenly a storm hit. The crew wanted to pack up, but I knew the lighting was perfect for capturing raw emotion. Sometimes the best moments come when things get shaky." Sofia Rodriguez moved efficiently through the cabin, securing loose items. As she passed their row, Morgan noticed how she maintained her balance with practiced ease. It struck him that while he sat in comfort most days, she navigated literal turbulence as part of her daily work. Jordan Pierce, still documenting everything, couldn't help but draw parallels between the physical turbulence and the emotional journey unfolding in the cabin. "Mr. Diesel," he ventured, "how do you stay so centered when everything around you is chaos?" Diesel's response was interrupted by a stronger bout of turbulence that sent an unused wine glass rolling down the aisle. Without hesitation, the action star reached out with impressive reflexes, catching the glass before it could shatter. "Practice," he said with a smile, handing the glass to Sophia, "and remembering what matters most." The moment sparked a deeper conversation about handling life's uncertainties. Olivia Bennett, who had been quietly observing, shared her own perspective about riding through personal storms. "The best stories," she noted, "often come from moments of turbulence in our lives." Morgan found himself listening with new ears. The man he had initially dismissed as out of place was demonstrating a mastery of life that went far beyond physical stunts or box office numbers. Each word Diesel spoke carried the weight of lived experience. "In my films," Diesel continued, "the cars are fast, the stunts are big, but at the core, it's always about family, about having people you can count on when the road gets rough." He turned to Morgan. "Your work in finance, it's not just about money, is it? There are families behind those investments, people whose lives are affected by every decision." The hedge fund manager sat back, struck by this perspective. He had always viewed his work through the lens of numbers and returns. But now, thinking about the pension funds he managed, the retirement accounts, the college savings plans, he began to see a deeper purpose. A particularly strong shake of the aircraft caused several passengers to gasp. Diesel used the moment to share a story about his early days in New York, working as a bouncer while pursuing his dreams of filmmaking. "Everyone has their own kind of turbulence to navigate," he said. "The key is not to let it shake your core values." Marcus Williams approached with an update from the cockpit, but ended up sharing how his own journey through aviation started with cleaning planes at night while studying during the day. "Every step up was like climbing a mountain," he said, "but each challenge made me stronger." The conversation took an unexpected turn when Jordan Pierce revealed his own struggles trying to break into filmmaking. "Everyone wants glossy demo reels and expensive equipment," he said, "but I'm shooting on my phone and editing in my mom's garage." Diesel's eyes lit up with interest. "Show me what you've got," he said, genuinely intrigued. The young filmmaker nervously pulled up some of his work on his phone. As they watched his short films together, the entire first-class cabin became an impromptu film festival. "You see that?" Diesel pointed out to Morgan, who had joined them in watching. "This kid has raw talent. He's not letting his limitations define his vision. That's the kind of investment that could really change lives." Morgan studied the young filmmaker's work with new eyes. Where once he might have seen amateur production values, now he saw potential and passion. His mind began working on possibilities, not just for profit, but for impact. Sofia Rodriguez, passing by with fresh drinks, shared how her daughter had started her journey into stunt work by practicing parkour in their neighborhood park. "She didn't have a gym or trainers," she said proudly, "but she had determination." The turbulence gradually began to ease, but the energy in the cabin remained electric. Olivia Bennett had filled several pages of her notebook, capturing the shifting dynamics and authentic moments of connection that continued to unfold. Captain Chin made another appearance, this time sharing how he'd started his aviation journey in a small propeller plane held together mainly by hope and determination. "Sometimes the roughest flights teach us the most valuable lessons," he observed. Morgan, who had started the flight believing his net worth was his most valuable asset, found himself reassessing everything. The stories of struggle, persistence, and triumph surrounding him carried a wealth that couldn't be measured in dollars. "You know what's funny?" Diesel mused, his voice carrying that signature gravelly warmth. "In Hollywood, people often talk about making it. But the truth is, the making of the person is more important than the making of the movie. Every role I take, every project I choose, has to align with that truth." The conversation evolved into a discussion about legacy. Morgan shared his fears about being remembered only for his financial achievements. "I've been measuring success by the wrong metrics," he admitted. "All these years, I thought I was building a legacy, but I was just accumulating numbers." Diesel nodded understanding. "Legacy isn't about what you leave behind," he said. "It's about who you lift up along the way. Every person in this cabin has a story of someone who believed in them, who gave them a chance when they didn't look the part." Jordan Pierce, still filming discreetly on his phone, captured these moments of authentic connection and transformation. The footage wasn't slick or professionally lit, but it carried a truth that no big-budget production could match. The young filmmaker suddenly had an idea. "Mr. Diesel," he said, his voice gaining confidence, "would you consider being part of a documentary about redefining success? Not about Hollywood or finance, but about the real stories of people defying expectations." Before Diesel could respond, Morgan spoke up. "I'd like to help fund that," he said, surprising himself as much as the others. "Not as a business investment, but as a way to share these stories that need to be told." The action star's face broke into his characteristic wide smile. "Now that," he said, "sounds like a family I'd like to be part of." Have you ever found unexpected connections in unlikely places? Share your stories of surprising friendships and transformative moments in the comments below. And stay tuned for our final chapter, where we'll see how this first-class encounter leads to groundbreaking changes in both Hollywood and Wall Street. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more incredible stories of redemption and reinvention. As the Los Angeles skyline emerged through the aircraft's windows, the first-class cabin had become something far more meaningful than a luxury travel compartment. The past few hours had transformed it into a space where authentic connections had shattered the invisible barriers of status and appearance. Alexander Morgan, who had boarded the plane believing his designer suit and hedge fund success were the ultimate measures of achievement, now sat comfortably discussing life with Vin Diesel, the man he had initially tried to humiliate. His tie was loosened, his platinum watch forgotten, and his attention fully focused on something more valuable than any investment portfolio: genuine human connection. Sofia Rodriguez approached with landing preparations, smiling as she heard Diesel and Morgan deeply engaged in discussion about Jordan Pierce's documentary concept. The young filmmaker had already started storyboarding his vision on a napkin, his hands trembling with excitement as he outlined a series that would challenge society's preconceptions about success and status. The key, Diesel was saying, his deep voice carrying that signature mix of authority and warmth, is to show the real stories. Not just the endings, but the struggles, the moments of doubt, the times when people had every reason to give up but chose to keep pushing forward. Morgan nodded, his financial mind already spinning with possibilities. We could create a fund, he suggested, not just for the documentary, but for identifying and supporting talented individuals who just need a chance. People like Jordan, people like Sophia's daughter, dreamers who have the drive but lack the resources. Olivia Bennett, who had filled nearly an entire notebook with observations, couldn't help but interject. This is exactly what I've been writing about, the shift from success being about personal accumulation to success being about community elevation. Captain Chen's voice came over the intercom announcing their final descent, but the energy in the cabin remained electric with possibility. The conversation had evolved far beyond a simple story of prejudice and redemption. It had become a catalyst for real change. Jordan shared more details about his vision for the documentary, his earlier nervousness replaced by passionate conviction. Each episode could follow someone who defied expectations, who proved that success isn't about what you wear or where you sit on a plane. It's about what you stand for. Diesel smiled that famous smile that had lit up screens worldwide. Family isn't just about blood, he said, echoing one of his most famous themes. Sometimes it's about recognizing ourselves in others, about building connections that lift everyone up. Morgan pulled out his phone, no longer to check stock prices but to start a note about the foundation he was already planning. We could call it Beyond Class, he suggested, a platform for identifying and supporting hidden talent across all industries. The idea caught fire among the first-class passengers. A tech executive from 4A offered to build a website and app. A marketing director proposed a social media campaign. What had started as a confrontation about who belonged in first class was evolving into a movement about redefining the very meaning of class. As the aircraft began its final approach, Sophia shared how her daughter's dream of becoming a stunt coordinator had seemed impossible just hours ago. Now, through the connections made on this flight, she had actual pathways to pursue her passion. Marcus Williams, securing the cabin for landing, reflected on how this single flight had generated more positive energy than years of luxury service. This, he said, is what true first class looks like, people from different walks of life coming together to create something meaningful. Diesel turned to Morgan with a thoughtful expression. You know, when you first questioned whether I belonged in first class, you were operating from an old script, one that equates worth with appearances. But look at what happened when that script got flipped. Morgan nodded, understanding deeply. I've spent years building walls with wealth, he admitted. Today taught me that real success is about building bridges. The Los Angeles terrain grew closer through the windows, the city of dreams spreading out beneath them. Jordan was still filming, capturing these final moments of an encounter that would soon impact far more lives than just those on the plane. Mr. Diesel, the young filmmaker said, would you consider being the narrator for the documentary? Your voice carries the authenticity this story needs. Before Diesel could respond, Morgan jumped in. I'll handle the funding. All of it. No strings attached, no profit expectations. It's time my money served a purpose beyond making more money. The action star's face broke into an even wider smile. Now that's what I call a power move, he said, his gravelly voice carrying genuine appreciation. Using your success to create opportunities for others, that's real strength. Captain Chen's voice announced their final descent into LAX, but it was clear that this journey was far from over. The seeds planted in this first-class cabin would grow into something far more significant than anyone could have predicted. 6 months later, Beyond Class would launch as both a documentary series and a foundation, sharing stories of unexpected success while providing resources and opportunities to overlook talent. Jordan Pierce's first episode, featuring the story of this flight, would go viral, challenging millions to reconsider their own prejudices and preconceptions. Sophia's daughter would indeed become one of Hollywood's few female stunt coordinators, paving the way for others to follow. Morgan's investment firm would transform into a pioneer of social impact investing, proving that profit and purpose could coexist. And Vin Diesel? He continued to fly first class in his tank tops and cargo shorts, but now with an even deeper purpose, seeking out stories of hidden talent and unexpected excellence, reminding everyone that true class has nothing to do with appearances and everything to do with character. The aircraft touched down smoothly on the LAX runway, bringing this particular journey to an end. But for everyone involved, it was really just the beginning. The story of what happened on that flight spread far beyond social media, becoming a reminder that sometimes the most important journeys aren't measured in miles, but in the distances we travel in our understanding of what truly matters. As the passengers prepared to disembark, Morgan turned to Diesel one last time. "Thank you," he said simply, "for showing me what real success looks like." Diesel's response was characteristic of the man who had built his career on the importance of family and authentic connections. "Thank you for being open to seeing it. That's what family does. We help each other grow." Have you ever had an encounter that completely changed your perspective on success and status? Share your story in the comments below. Remember, true class isn't about where you sit, it's about how you treat others and the impact you choose to make in the world. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to never miss another incredible story of transformation and redemption. And remember, in a world where you can be anything, be someone who lifts others up. Because as Vin Diesel and this remarkable flight proved, that's what makes us truly first class.